Hello, welcome to my live stream tonight. I'm Annette Bybee, and I'm going to be checking my phone to see if it's actually showing. Um, hmm, yeah, all right. So I'm going to try and do this every Tuesday night at 6, although I may change that time to like 5 if it seems like I want to hit people on the way home. I don't know. I'm just doing this for now. So see, before I get into the topic of the Great Barrington Declaration and Twitter, I wanted to share that I am currently reading this book. You can see that. The Psychology of Totalitarianism. And I heard this book mentioned, I think, on Glenn Beck. And it basically talks about why people go along with things like the whole COVID lockdown. And I've just barely started, but it sounds like what they're going to talk about is something called mass formation. I'll share more as I read this on my radio show. Every Thursday at 1 o'clock Mountain Time, you can find me on AnnetteTalks.com. Just go to the Listen Live button and click on there. And then it replays again on Sunday night on AM 560. You can also listen on Annette Talks. Then I stick it on all my podcast platforms and YouTube and Rumble. So anyway, but I wanted to add this platform to my radio show because I want to be able to come in more than once a week and talk about things. And so to me, one of the big stories that came out this week, and this was from the Twitter files. I think it was Twitter file number 4. It was either number 4 or number 5. But it talked about the fact that the Great Barrington Declaration was censored. And so I wanted to talk about that. If you're not familiar with the Great Barrington Declaration, stick around and learn about it because it's really important. And it's really important that this happened. I can remember in 2020 when it must have been April or May when the lockdowns were still fairly new and it all felt wrong. And someone posted something on Facebook, and it was an old study, it was like a case study that some doctors and I think psychiatrists had written, and it was basically looking at a scenario of something similar to COVID. There's some kind of a virus that happens, and what should you do? Should you lock down? They talked about should you lock down or should you stay open, or what should you do? And basically, the conclusion that they reached was that you should only protect the people that are at risk and let everybody else go about their lives in normal fashion. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting because this was written, I don't know, a long time ago, maybe 2012 or something, but well before COVID. And I thought that was interesting that this group of professionals, medical professionals, had reached this conclusion that you should not lock down, that it would have been harmful to society and unnecessary. And so it was interesting because we never had this discussion. It was just Fauci told us what to do and we all did it. So the Great Barrington Declaration is similar, and I'm going to get to that. But first, I want to talk about what we found out about Twitter this week. So there's this article, and I think this is in the fee.org. It's a free enterprise, something. free economic, I don't know. Anyway, it's about free markets, basically. All right, so users have suspected Twitter of engaging in shadow banning and suppressing the visibility of user accounts for years, even though the social media giant has adamantly denied the practice. Yesterday, December 8th, so this came out on the 9th, using the information provided by Twitter under direction from new CEO Elon Musk, journalist Barry Weiss released a Twitter thread confirming these suspicions. Twitter secretly suppressed accounts, operated a search blacklist, and blocked certain content from trending, Weiss's thread confirms. In response, Musk tweeted that Twitter plans to release software that will provide users with more clarity regarding shadow banning. And I read this again recently that now if you're on Twitter, once the software is done, it'll tell you if you're being shadow banned or throttled or whatever, and it'll tell you why, and then it'll give you a way to appeal. So it won't be like in the old days where you didn't even know this was happening to you. Victims of Twitter's practices include Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, a Stanford professor of medicine and co-author of the Great Barrington Declaration. Weiss's thread and the Twitter files confirm what we've long suspected. Seeking to prop up Anthony Fauci and the lockdown policies he promoted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Twitter and other big tech companies intentionally blacklisted, censored, suppressed, and targeted the Great Barrington Declaration and its signers. So some of you are probably saying, I've never heard of the Great Barrington Declaration. This is why. It was throttled, it was blacklisted. Within Twitter, the Strategic Response Team, Global Escalation Team, or SRTGET, worked on hundreds of cases daily, actively filtering the visibility of select accounts. For high-profile accounts, the Site Integrity Policy Escalation Support Team, known as SIPPES, would secretly make censorship decisions. The SIPPES team comprised high-profile executives such as the head of legal policy and trust, Vijaya Gad, global head of trust and safety, Yoel Roth, and former CEOs Jack Dorsey and Parag Agrawal. Try and say these names right. But a lot of higher ups who are secretly making these decisions. And if you don't know, also, the big news that came out with this was that Trump was being censored, even though he wasn't doing anything that went against Twitter policies. They just didn't like him, and they were comparing him to Nazis. So that's who these people were. In addition to Weiss, Twitter's new leadership granted journalist Matt Taibbi access to its files. Below, Taibbi illustrates how Twitter deleted tweets at the behest of the Biden presidential campaign. So this wasn't just them. Biden's campaign was telling them what to do. Still unfolding in this investigation is the role of government officials in pressuring Twitter to engage in censorship over the COVID-19 pandemic. As revealed by a lawsuit earlier this year, internal company Slack messages show that Andy Slavitt, a former official on Joe Biden's pandemic task force, met with Twitter officials and pressured them to restrict the account of COVID gadfly Alex Barrington. So I mentioned this last week, but Alex Barrington was a journalist who kept talking about COVID lockdowns and how they were a bad idea until Biden's guy pressured Twitter to kick him off. And so then he had proof from this Slack message that it was from Biden. And so he's suing the White House. I'm waiting to hear how this lawsuit is going. It could be huge because that could mean that a private company is going to be accused of possibly indicted for First Amendment violations. Usually that only comes from the government. But if Barrington can prove that Twitter is acting as an agent of the government because they were pressured by Biden, then this opens up a whole new avenue of ways to sue these people. All right. So Slavitt also delivered an ominous warning to executives at Facebook that the company would find itself in the White House's crosshairs if it did not step up efforts to restrict what the task force deemed to be COVID misinformation. So Biden's guy is running around to Facebook and Twitter and pressuring them and basically saying, you're not going to allow anything to be said that's not our narrative. So anything that goes against the official lockdown narrative, out. All right. We now have conclusive evidence that public officials pressure private companies to do the dirty work of censorship. We have yet to discover and may never know how far the political involvement in social media censorship went, and which officials were given the power to silence. An ongoing lawsuit by the Attorneys General of Missouri and Louisiana is currently seeking to get to the bottom of those questions. Just 2 weeks ago, they obtained a court-ordered deposition from Anthony Fauci in which they grilled him over similar suppressive tactics. Fauci proved evasive, invoking the "I don't recall" line 174 times, but was caught in a lie about his direct personal involvement in the National Institute of Health's efforts to smear and discredit GBD's, the Great Barrington Declaration's authors, as fringe epidemiologists. The co-author Jay Bhattacharya, I can't say that, was slapped with a secret trends blacklist tag by Twitter executives at some point after his account was created in September 2021. Weiss's thread confirms the blacklist tag effectively suppressed his tweets by preventing them from going viral or being picked up by Twitter's trends algorithms. By all appearances, one or more persons on the company's SIP-PES team made the decision to suppress scientifically grounded dissent against lockdowns. So basically, the Great Barrington Declaration never went viral because Twitter wouldn't allow it to go viral. And so this thing was huge, but most people never heard of it. I mean, I knew about it because I was listening to people on the right that were sharing it. And I don't spend much time on Twitter. I always thought it was a cesspool, and now I'm right. Although now it's getting cleaned up, so it might be all right. All right. Given the history surrounding social media giants, government officials, and the Great Barrington Declaration, Bhattacharya's shadow banning is not surprising. Unfortunately, neither Weiss nor Taibbi's thread indicates why Twitter took such actions against Dr. Bhattacharya, a respected Stanford professor. What we do know is that Twitter's actions are consistent with other social media censorship of the Declaration, its authors, and supporters. Posts referencing the GBD were removed from popular Reddit threads such as r COVID-19 and r coronavirus, and large online communities with millions of members. Google also played a role. In the week after the GBD's release in October 2020, Google's news site search algorithms suppressed mainstream coverage of the document by outlets such as Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. Instead, it steered news searches for Great Barrington Declaration toward anti-Great Barrington Declaration hit pieces in fringe venues such as the Byline Times, a blog featuring 9/11 conspiracy theorist Nafiz Ahmed. Google algorithms reportedly prioritized an anti-Great Barrington Declaration political editorial in Wired magazine that Anthony Fauci also minded for his own anti-GBD talking points in the press. So we have, and it goes on to talk about the fact that, yes, Fauci was directly tied. They have an email in here to Fauci from Francis Collins at the NIH, basically saying that they needed him to go out and smear the Great Barrington Declaration authors, which he did. And they have it on record, even though Fauci lied about it. So we had Fauci, Twitter, Google, Facebook, the Biden administration, all censoring the Great Barrington Declaration, which came out in October 2020. So you're saying, okay, well, what is the Great Barrington Declaration and why are they censoring it? Well, the Great Barrington Declaration, you can go to, I think it's Great Barrington or gbd.org, but if you just Google Great Barrington Declaration and go to their official website, you'll find out what it is. This was signed in October 4th, 2020. So this is like, 6 months into the lockdowns and everything. So the Great Barrington Declaration, I'm just going to read this to you so you get an idea. As infectious special disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we call focused protection. Okay, this is like what I was talking about earlier when I said I saw a study, or it was like a case study written by scientists looking at what they recommended to do if there's a virus. These are the guys. These are epidemiologists and other public health scientists who signed this. And I think when I looked today, there were something like 819,000 signatures. Mine is on there. You can go and sign this and agree with it. But the three authors are Martin Kulldorff, professor of medicine at Harvard, biostatistician and epidemiologist, Dr. Sunetra Gupta, professor at Oxford, epidemiologist with expertise in immunology and vaccine development, etc. And then Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, professor at Stanford. So these are Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford doctors, right? These are not some quacks. These are not some little known doctors on the fringe or whatever. These are really well known epidemiologists that wrote this thing. And this is what they say: coming from both the left and right and around the world, we have devoted our careers to protecting people. Current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long term public health. The results, to name a few, include lower childhood vaccination rates, worsening cardiovascular disease outcomes, fewer cancer screenings, and deteriorating mental health. And this is before so many suicides started happening, leading to greater excess mortality in years to come, with the working class and younger members of society carrying the heaviest burden. Keeping students out of school is a grave injustice. And I can tell you, because I'm working in the school districts right now, the kids are still way behind. They lost like a year of their education, and it is really, really affecting their education. Thank you, Stephen Daniels. All right, keeping these measures in place until a vaccine is available will cause irreparable damage, with the underprivileged disproportionately harmed. Fortunately, our understanding of the virus is growing. We know that vulnerability to death from COVID-19 is more than 1,000-fold higher in the old and infirm than the young. Indeed, for children, COVID-19 is less dangerous than many other harms, including influenza. I think at one point, they actually, I saw a study somewhere that said that kids were more likely to get hit by lightning than they were to die of COVID. As immunity builds in the population, the risk of infection to all, including the vulnerable, falls. We know that all populations will eventually reach herd immunity, i.e., the point at which the rate of new infection is stable, and that this can be assisted by, but is not dependent upon, a vaccine. Our goal should therefore be to minimize mortality and social harm until we reach herd immunity. So this is something that we never heard about from Fauci or one of these other so-called professionals that were being held up to the public. They never talked about social harm. It was all about, we were going to flatten the curve, and then we were going to crush the curve. We were just going to end COVID, right? The most compassionate approach that balances the risks and benefits of reaching herd immunity is to allow those who are at minimal risk of death to live their lives normally, to build up immunity to the virus through natural infection, while better protecting those who are at higher risk. We call this focused protection. Isn't that, you've probably never even heard of this, right? Most of you who were around during the lockdowns never heard of anyone come out and say, hey, maybe we should consider focused protection. You never heard Fauci come out and say, you know, we're thinking about whether lockdowns are best or if we should go with focused protection. Isn't that interesting? And that's because, hi Cindy, and that's because Twitter, let me find my little list here of all the people that were suppressing this. And at the behest of Biden. Twitter, Google, Facebook, and I'm going to add YouTube, because YouTube censored me, took down like 3 of my YouTube videos whenever I question anything. Whenever I question masking or vaccines, my YouTube videos were taken down, and I was locked out of YouTube for a week. So even just little people like me couldn't do this. So Twitter, Google, Facebook, Fauci, Biden administration. These people were all suppressing this, even though there were more than 800,000 signatures, huge numbers of those medical professionals. All right, going on here. Adopting measures to protect the vulnerable should be the central aim of public health responses to COVID-19. By way of example, nursing homes should use staff with acquired immunity and perform frequent testing of other staff and all visitors. Staff rotation should be minimized. Retired people living at home should have groceries and other essentials delivered to their home. When possible, they should meet family members outside rather than inside. Notice they didn't say you should keep all family members away, period. You should just let old people die alone. A comprehensive and detailed list of measures, including approaches to multi generational households, can be implemented and is well within the scope and capability of public health professionals. Those who are not vulnerable should immediately be allowed to resume life as normal. Wouldn't it have been interesting if we would have heard this that had been going around in October of 2020, and we would have been debating this in the public forums? Only a few of us were doing that because this wasn't out there. All right. Simple hygiene measures such as hand washing and staying home when sick should be practiced by everyone to reduce the herd immunity threshold. Schools and universities should be open for in-person teaching. Extracurricular activities such as sports should be resumed. Young, low-risk adults should work normally rather than from home. Restaurants and other businesses should open. Arts, music, sport, and other cultural activities should resume. People who are more at risk may participate if they wish, while society as a whole enjoys the protection conferred upon the vulnerable by those who have built up herd immunity. So, again, we have the three doctors that authored this and published it are from Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. Over 800,000 people have signed on to it. But we didn't get to debate this in October 2020, October 2021, or October 2022 because it was suppressed by Twitter. Thank you, Elon Musk, for getting in there and exposing this nonsense. We cannot allow this to happen again. I would urge you to go find this. I think it's gbd.org, but go find the Great Barrington Declaration and sign it and share it and talk about it. We cannot let this happen again. So I am super glad that Elon Musk is in there exposing this, but we cannot let this happen again. And you know they're going to try. They're going to try with everything. Watch for lawsuits from Alex Barrington against the White House. If he wins against the White House, things are going to change. Things are going to change. All right. That's it for my rant tonight. My goal is about 20 minutes on this for now. May change later. Feel free to share this with your friends. Tune into my radio show Thursday at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. You can go to AnnetteTalks.com and find it there. Or Sunday night at 9 if you want to listen live again. Or go to any podcast platform and search up Annette Talks, and you can find it there. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.